भूतेषु यं भागवत सेवया भगवते उत्तम श्लोके भक्तिर्भवति नैष्टिकी कृष्णाय वासुदेवाय देवकी नंदनाय च नंदगोपकुमाराय गोविंदाय नमो नमो पंकज नाभाय नमो पंकज मालिनी नमो पंकज नेत्राय नमस्ते पंकजांग्रे. Hare Krishna. So we'll take a shloka from Canto 1. I consider that to be relevant for today's topic. Text 15, Chapter 1, Canto 1, 1115. So it goes like this. Yatpada samshaya suta munaya prashamayana sadhya punanti pasprithaha swardhuni apo anusevaya. O Sutta, those great sages who have completely taken shelter of the lotus feet of the Lord can at once sanctify those who come in touch with them, whereas the waters of the Ganges can sanctify only after prolonged use. Purport by His Divine Grace Sri Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Pure devotees of the Lord are more powerful than the waters of the sacred river Ganga. One can derive spiritual benefit out of prolonged use of Ganges waters, but one can be sanctified at once by the mercy of a pure devotee of the Lord. In Bhagavad Gita, it is said that any person, regardless of birth as Shudra, woman, or merchant, can take shelter of the lotus feet of the Lord, and by so doing can return to Godhead. To take shelter of the lotus feet of the Lord means to take shelter of the pure devotees. The pure devotees whose only business is serving are honored by the names Prabhupada and Vishnupada, which indicate such devotees to be representative of the lotus feet of the Lord. Anyone, therefore, who takes shelter of the lotus feet of a pure devotee by accepting the pure devotee as a spiritual master can be at once purified. Such devotees of the Lord are honored equally with the Lord because they are engaged in the most confidential service of the Lord, for they deliver out of the material world the fallen souls whom Lord wants to return home back to Godhead. Such pure devotees are better known as wise lords according to revealed scriptures. The sincere disciple of a pure devotee considers the spiritual master equal to the Lord, but always considers himself to be a humble servant of the Lord. This is the pure devotional path. Om Ajnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Sri Chaitanya Amano Vistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamsya Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sagana Raghunathanvitam tam sajivam sadvaitam savadutam parijana sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Pada Sagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitamsya Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshitarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna. So welcome all of you again. A couple of months ago, if you remember, we had spoken about how Indra had to suffer the consequences of disrespecting his spiritual master Brahaspati, and how as a result of killing Vishwarupa, the substitute for Brahaspati as the spiritual master of demigods, he had to undergo a lot of tribulations, and how his father Twasta, that is Vishwarupa's father Twasta, became enraged upon hearing his son's death, and how he performed a particular ritual for the purpose of begetting a son who was capable of killing Indra. We also had seen how Twasta got a son named Rudrasura, a demon, but a great devotee of the Lord, from the yajna he performed, and how he fought against Indra so valiantly, and also how he was ultimately killed by Indra with the help of a thunderbolt made out of the body of sage Dadichi, Dadichi's body. Today we shall see who this Ratrasura really was in his previous life, and why he gets the body of an Asura in this life. We'll also look for some lessons as we go along. Yeah. Now, after hearing the great narration from Shukadeva Goswami, Maharaja Parikshit inquired from Shukadeva Goswami how demons are generally sinful due to being absorbed in the modes of passion and ignorance. How then could Vratrasura have attained such an exalted state of love for the Supreme Personality of Godhead? Among the living entities within the material world, who are as numerous as atoms, a very few are human beings. Out of 8.4 lakh species, 84 lakh species, only 4 lakh species are human beings. And among them, only a few are interested in following the religious principles. Out of many such persons, only a few desire liberation from the bondage of material existence. Amongst many thousands of these, one may become actually liberated. And among many millions of liberated persons and who are perfect in knowledge, one may be found who is an unalloyed devotee of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Narayana. For such devotees are extremely rare. So Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, verse 7.3, Manushanam sahasreshu kaschid yatati siddhe yatatam api siddhanam kaschin mam veti tatvata. Out of many thousands of men, thousands among men, one may endeavor to for perfection, and of those who have achieved perfection, hardly one knows me in truth. So, Parikshit Maharaj's question was, how could such a sinful demon like Vratrasura, who always gave trouble to and anxiety to others, become so advanced in Krishna consciousness? Shukadeva Goswami then narrated the history that he had heard from great sages Vyasadeva, Narada, and Devala. He said, there was once a king named Chitraketu who ruled the entire earth from his capital within the province of Shurasena. He had 10 million wives, and yet he did not have a child. Because of this, Chitraketu was full of anxiety. Seeing this, one day, the great sage Angira, a mind-born son of Lord Brahma, arrived at Chitraketu's palace, and the king received him with all honors and sat next to him down on the floor. After inquiring about the well-being of all, including his wives and children, including wife and citizens. Oh, sorry, he did not have any children. The sage Angira said, I can see that your mind is displeased and disturbed, and your pale face reflects your deep anxiety. What is the reason? Maharaja Chitraketu replied, O sage, you are so great that you can understand everything regarding the conditioned souls like us, but still you are inquiring from me the cause of my anxiety. As a person afflicted by hunger and thirst cannot be satisfied by offerings of flower garlands and sandalwood paste, I am not pleased with my empire or possessions due to not having a son. Because I have a big kingdom, I rule over the world, but I don't have a son. What is the use? So, great sage, please save me, save my forefathers as well as myself from hellish life by enabling me to have a son. So this was the request of Chitraketu. So being very merciful, sage Angira performed a particular sacrifice wherein sweet rice is offered to the demigod Twasta. The prasada was given to the first and the foremost, most qualified Chitraketu's queens, Kritaditi. Angira then informed the king, he will get a son who will be the cause of both Harsha and Shoka, jubilation and lamentation. And without saying a word, the sage disappeared. In due course of time, Kritaditi became pregnant and gave birth to a son whom the king named Harsha Shoka. When they heard the news, all of the citizens in the state of Shurasena became extremely pleased, and the king himself was the most overjoyed. So Chitraketu engaged learned Brahmins in performing the birth ceremony. He gave big charity to the Brahmanas and to almost everyone in his kingdom, just to increase the reputation, opulence, and longevity of his newborn son. Angira Rishi had informed Chitraketu that his son would become a cause of jubilation as well as lamentation. The king did not really understand the significance of the statement. He thought there will be certainly jubilation because upon his birth, because I got a son after many, many years. And being the only child, I'm sure to pamper him. And because of that, he will no doubt become proud of his position. And because of this, he may not be obedient to me. So that's all right. It is better to have a disobedient son rather than not have a son. So Chitraketu and Queen Kritaditi, after finally getting their son, their love for the child grew day by day. However, the millions of co-wives, he had 10 million wives, mind you, they were very much agitated and with the desire to have sons of their own, they became very jealous. And they saw king is neglecting us. So being neglected by their husband and seeing Kritadyuti's great fortune, this co-wives envy, their envy became increasingly strong, and they lost all good intelligence. They gave vent to their pent-up anger. They somehow managed to poison the small boy. The boy was killed. Thus, so when the maid servant went to bring the child to the queen, she found the child dead. She started crying loudly, and Queen Kritadyuti heard it. She also came there running where the child was sleeping. She immediately fell unconscious, seeing this dead child. All other queens also came there to the spot and started crying piteously just to make a show, because they were the culprits themselves. When Chitraketu came to know of this, his grief knew no bounds. He also fell unconscious at the feet of his son. Seeing this, Kritadyuti started cursing the Creator for taking away the son when the father is still alive. And in so many other ways. And seeing his wife lamenting like this, Chitraketu began crying loudly, and all the citizens joined in with great grief. Understanding that King Chitraketu had almost become bereft of life, the great sage Angira came there again, this time with Narada Muni. And they came and started instructing. They instructed him, "O king, what relationship does this body have with you? You may say that you are related to him as father and son, but do you think that this relationship existed before? Or will it continue to exist in future? Does it actually exist now?" It says, as pieces of seawood come together on the surface of the ocean and then are separated by the force of the waves, so the living entities who have accepted material bodies come together and then are again separated by force of time. When seeds are sown in the ground, they sometimes grow into plants and sometimes they do not fructify. Similarly, being impelled by the energy of the Lord, a prospective father can sometimes beget a child, and sometimes conception does not take place. Therefore, one should not lament over the artificial relationship of parenthood, which is ultimately controlled by the Supreme Lord. Angira gave some more instructions to convince the king Chitraketu that every living being is in a temporary situation, and so is the cosmic manifestation. King Chitraketu was destined not to get a son, despite having millions of wives. A child was sent by the grace of Maya, but the child was not to live for long. Knowing this, Angira Rishi had informed the king that he would beget a son who would cause him both jubilation and lamentation. Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, Dehinosmin 2.13, Dehinosmin yatha dehe, kaumaram yavanam jara, tatha dehantara praptir, dhiras tatrana muhyat. As the embodied soul continuously passes in this body from boyhood to youth to old age, and the soul similarly passes into another body at death. A sober person is not bewildered by such change. Again in 2.14, Krishna says, Matra sparshasya kaunteya, shitoshna sukha dukkhada, agama payino anityas, tam stitikshava bharata. O son of Kunti, the non-permanent appearance of happiness and distress and their appearance in due course are like the appearance of winter and summer seasons. They arise from sense perception, ocean of Bharata, and one must learn to tolerate them without being disturbed. Now, after hearing the instructions of Angira and Narada, King Chitraketu became a little enlightened and was relieved to some extent from his false lamentation, and he profusely thanked both of them. Rishi Angira said, "My dear king, it is very unsuitable for an advanced devotee of the Lord like you to become absorbed in lamentation over the loss of something material. Therefore, we have come here to relieve you of this false grief, which is born of ignorance." So we read that shloka 1.1.15, where sages of Naimisharanya tell Suta Goswami, "Yat pada samshraya suta munaya para prashamayanaha sadya punanti upashritaha swarduni apo anushevaya." So, O Suta, O great sages who have completely taken shelter of this lotus feet of the Lord, can at once sanctify those who come in touch with them, whereas the waters of Ganges can sanctify only after prolonged use. So, this is the importance of association with the devotees, particularly the pure devotees, and that is how Chitraketu become enlightened. Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita 2.27, "Jatyasya hi dhruvam mrityur dhruvam yanma mritasya cha dhruvam janma mritasya cha tasmad apariharye arthe natvam shochitam arhasi." One who has taken birth is sure to die, and after death, one is sure to take birth again. Therefore, in the unavoidable situation, the discharge of your duty, you should not lament. So this lamentation is not worth it. That's what Munis, Rishis also say. So Angira said, "When I first came to visit you, I could have given you the supreme transcendental knowledge. But because you are so materially absorbed, I only gave you a son." As Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, "Bhogaishwarya prasaktanam tapa paharta chetasam vyavasayatmika buddhi samadhavana vidiyate." In the minds of those who are too attached to sense enjoyment and material opulence, and who are bewildered by such things, the resolute determination for devotional service to the Supreme Lord does not take place. So King Chitraketu was very much involved in material opulences and management of his kingdom. So at that time, if you had to advise, probably he would not taken it seriously. Now you are actually experiencing the misery of a person who has sons and daughters, because they are all temporary. One's wife, friends, relatives, palace, kingdom, treasury, and all other opulence and objects of sense perception, they are cause of fear, illusion, lamentation, and distress. When Angira had first come to the king, Chitraketu, he did not bring Narada with him. But this time, because at that time he knew that king was overly attached to the material enjoyment and was not in a mood of renunciation. And with no amount of preaching about the Bhakti Yoga, it would make an impact on him. So this time he had brought Narada Muni. So Narada Muni, seeing the situation and after utilizing his mystic power, Narada Muni brought the departed soul Chitraketu, the departed son of Chitraketu, into the vision of lamenting relatives. Narada Muni then said, "O living entity, just see how your mother, father, friends, and relatives are overwhelmed with grief because of your having passed away. Because you have died untimely, you can still re-enter your body and enjoy the remainder of your lifetime surrounded by your friends and relatives and accept the royal throne of your father. The living entity re-entered his former body and replied. There are so many things he's saying. So, according to the result of my fruitive activities, I, the living entity, the living being, the Jiva soul, transmigrate from one body to the another. Thus, I sometimes appear in the society of demigods, sometimes in the human species, and sometimes as a lower animal or plant. In which birth were these my father and mother? There's the topic for today's discussion. Because no one is my actual mother and father, how can I accept these two persons as my parents? This material world carries one away like a river, and thus all people become friends, relatives, and enemies in due course of time. The living entity wanders throughout the universe, being injected into various bodies by one father after another, and thus he is just like gold that changes hands again and again, along with the sense of proprietorship. There are quite a few paras dealing with this. So, how the relationships are temporary, but I do not wish to narrate them so long as the central point is understood. And that is, one should not lament for such loss or relationship, which is natural process. After Jiva finished speaking, he departed immediately. By hearing his words, Chitraketu and his other relatives were astonished. By cutting off the shackles of affection, all relatives gave up their lamentation. And then they performed the necessary funeral ceremonies. They burned the body of the child. The other queens who had poisoned the child lost their entire bodily luster due to shame and gave up their ambition to bear children any longer. As a result of hearing from these two sages, Chitraketu became fully enlightened with spiritual knowledge and thus able to come out of the dark well of family life. After taking bath in the Yamuna, he offered oblations of water to his forefathers and the two sons of Brahma, Angira and Narada. Thereafter, being very pleased with Chitraketu, Narada gave him a mantra and told him to recite it with great attention, for it is most auspicious. By very carefully chanting these mantras in 7 nights, you will be able to see the Supreme Personality of God face to face. Both of them then left for Brahmaloka. For 1 week, Chitraketu fasted, drinking only water with great care and attention, and he continuously chanted the mantra that had been given to him by Narada. After just 1 week, Chitraketu was awarded the rule of Vidyadhara planet as an intermediate byproduct of his spiritual advancement. Then, just a few days later, by the influence of the same mantra, King Chitraketu attained the shelter of the lotus feet of Lord Ananta Deva. So he could see Anantadeva. As soon as he saw Supreme Lord, Chitraketu became cleansed of all material contamination, and thus he became situated in the original Krishna consciousness. His voice choked up due to ecstasy, and he was not able to speak for considerable time, seeing the Lord in front of him. After pacifying his mind by means of intelligence, King Chitraketu offered several prayers, and Lord was very much pleased by Chitraketu's prayers, and he gave him several instructions. He concluded his instruction by saying, "O king, if you accept this conclusion while remaining unattached to material enjoyment, adhering to me with great faith, then you will be able to achieve the highest perfection in life by attaining my eternal station." Then Lord disappeared. Now Chitraketu becomes a little proud, and he started traveling all over the universe as the head of Vidyadharas in a brilliantly effulgent airplane that had been given to him by Lord Vishnu. At the same chanting the glories of the Lord and surrounded by Vidyadhara women. Once upon a time, while traveling through the sky, Chitraketu saw Lord Shiva in an assembly of great sages, embracing Parvati with his arms as she was sitting upon his lap, speaking on the topic of surrendering to the Lord. Being very astonished, Chitraketu laughed loudly and then exclaimed within the hearing of all, "Lord Shiva is the spiritual master of the whole world, the best of all performance of austerities, and foremost of strict followers of Vedic principles. Nonetheless, he is seated with his wife upon his lap in the midst of saintly persons, embracing her as if he were a shameless human being. Ordinary persons enjoy the company of their wives in a solitary place, and yet Lord Shiva, even though he is a master of austerity, is embracing his wife openly in an assembly of great rishis." Upon hearing Chitraketu's statement, Lord Shiva simply smiled, as did the other sages, because Lord Shiva smiled, other sages also smiled. Lord Shiva and the rishis knew that Chitraketu was merely appreciating the exalted position of the Lord and not blaspheming him as Daksha did. Still, it was highly improper for Chitraketu to criticize Lord Shiva in this way, in the presence of all sages. So, when Goddess Parvati heard this, however, she was very angry. She angrily reprimanded him with so many words and thought that he should be punished. Because he is puffed off, thinking that I am the best, she cursed him, saying, "O impudent one, my dear son, you must now take birth in a low, sinful family of demons, so that you will learn not to ever again commit such offense against exalted personalities." Chitraketu, hearing this, had become somewhat, somewhat understood his mistake, though he had become proud because of the favor received from Lord Sankarshana. However, he immediately, upon being cursed, he descended from his airplane and bowed down before Parvati with great humility. He then said, "My dear mother, I accept your curse with folded hands. Knowing that happiness and distress are awarded to me by demigods as a result of my past deeds, I do not mind receiving whatever I may deserve. O mother, you have become unnecessarily angry, but I do not blame you. Although I did not speak wrongly, I do not beg to be relieved from your curse. Instead, I wish that whatever wrong you think I have committed may be excused by you." Chitraketu knew that he did not act offensively towards Lord Shiva, So he considered that higher authority must have ordained this punishment. Actually, Lord wanted Chitraketu to return back home as soon as possible. So by acting through the heart of Parvati, he thought it is the Lord's way of liberating him soon. So both Shiva and Parvati, seeing how Chitraketu had remained unafraid, in spite of being cursed, smiled in astonishment. Shiva also would have liked to criticize Chitraketu for externally posing as a great devotee, while at heart being interested in enjoying with the other women. But he did not do that, because both the demigods, he thought Chitraketu must have said as a friend. Parvati did not understand the joking relationship between these two devotees. So Lord Shiva addressed his wife Parvati. You have seen how great the Vaishnavas are. They started glorifying Vaishnavas. They are not interested in any kind of material happiness. They only look for opportunity to serve the Lord, and they do not fear any condition of life. For them, heaven, hell, or liberation, all same. Hearing this and quite a few things Lord Shiva tells her, Parvati became very ashamed after hearing her husband's speech, and she covered her face with the border of her sari. Chitraketu appeared as a demon, but the sacrificial fire of from the sacrificial fire of Twasta, and became known as Vritrasura, fully equipped with transcendental knowledge and Krishna consciousness. So, when you leave this body, you take your feelings with you. Mind, intelligence, and false ego also goes with you. So, same Chitraketu became Vritrasura, and he became a great devotee. So, the striking points in this story, according to me, are about 4 or 5. First is 10 million wives of King Chitraketu. Now, I was just wondering, how can anybody have, even Krishna had only 1,008 wives, and he had provided palaces for all of them. Now, imagine 10 million wives. 10 million is 1 crore. I don't know whether it is blasphemy, because we are speaking something about the scriptures. So it is really mind-boggling. That, even if you take in Satyuga, you had a lifetime of 100,000 years. With the 1 million wives, he will have 100 wives, by arithmetic, in a year. That means 3 to 4 days each wife. And the rest of their lives, they will not have association of the king. So it is really mind-boggling, but because we have to accept it, because Bhagavatam is written by literal incarnation of Supreme Lord Vasudeva. Though it is really difficult to understand where they lived, how they assembled at one place when the child died. All these are really inconceivable. But we have to accept, as I said, because otherwise it might become a blasphemy of this Bhagavatam. The second point is the co-wives of Kritadyuti poisoning the child, Harshashoka, and they exhibited their envy. What is envy? Envy is the feeling of discontentment or resentful longing aroused by someone else's possessions or qualities or luck. In this case, they all thought, we don't have a child, but Kritadyuti has a child. So they were all envious because they don't have it. So they were discontented or resentful So it was a resentful longing aroused by someone else's possessions. Envy and jealous are different. Envy and jealous are generally used to mean the same thing, but they are different. Jealous is the unpleasant suspicion or apprehension of rivalship. Jealous means one fears that someone will take away what you have. And envy means one desires what someone has. So in this case, probably Kritaditya's co-wives, they were envious as well as jealous, because envy because they didn't have a child, jealous because the Kritaditya is taking away our husbands. They had that fear that because he was only favoring Kritaditya, so they had that fear. So they were envious as well as jealous. Third point is a moment's association with sadhus, as we described about it, can bring about enlightenment. Sadhus, I mean here, are the brahmacharis or sannyasis in today's context, and who do not have a family, but they have had enough time to closely see the lives of grihasthas, draw similes from scriptures, and have understood their miseries. Many times, grihasthas are so engrossed in the entanglement of material existence of day-to-day life that they do not have time to sit and think, who am I, why I'm here, and what is my goal of life, why I'm under the control of material lamentation, and what is my relationship with God, etc. So we don't have the time. And we don't have the time to draw similes and learn from the scriptures. Their activities are full of desires. That is the reason why we should always make it a point to take the association of pure devotees of the Lord, and we can get direction to our lives, which otherwise would take years, or even after that we may not get it. We always pray and offer our grateful thanks to our Guru by chanting Om Ajnanatimidandasya. So this is very important in our life. So we should try to take as much of association of pure devotees in general, and pure devotees particularly. So the fourth point which occurs to me is, in which birth were they mothers and father? That's what the son of Chitraketu were asking when his life was revived. So Harsha Shoka questions the erstwhile parents. According to the results of a living entity's fruitive actions, he is forced to enter the material elements in different types of bodies. This time he had entered the body made by the king and queen. Actually, however, he was not their son. The living entity is the son of Supreme Personality of Godhead. And because he wants to enjoy this material world, the Supreme Lord gives him a chance to enter various bodies. The living entity has no true relationship with the material body. He gets from his material father and mother. The body created by the so-called father and mother actually has nothing to do with the so-called creators. Therefore, the living entity flatly denied that Maharaja Chitraketu and his wife were his father and mother. So this is something which you have to really meditate on, because we always think that somebody is related to us as father and mother, brother, sister, and all that. But we come here to this material world for a while, for a particular cause, and to probably fulfill our desires. God gives us this life in this material world, and then we go back unconcerned, unconnected with anybody. So too much lamentation on separation of our relatives is not good and not considered good in the scriptures. Fifth point is Chitraketu chastising Lord Shiva. This ultimately resulted in Chitraketu getting the body of a demon in his next life because of joking with Shiva. So Lord Shiva took no offense to Chitraketu's remarks. Who knows? Probably he could understand that is the reason why he laughed at me, because he was ultimately to get a body of a demon and ultimately go back to God soon. And he knew that Chitraketu was only joking. But Mother Parvati, one can say, about her curse, one can say that Chitraketu was destined to get the body of a demon in his next life, and Supreme Lord only facilitated it by giving a thought in Parvati's mind that Chitraketu has insulted Lord Shiva and therefore she should curse. So these are the striking points in this, or points to ponder in this story. I just now will complete this in another 2-3 minutes, talking about the lessons, which I normally do. One lesson I think in this story is whether one has one wife or 10 million wives, if one is destined to get a child, he will surely get it. He will get it with one wife also. It is the Supreme Lord who decides this, and not we. You may marry hundreds of thousands of women, but that might not help. It is not your ability which is important. It is God's grace that is important. Second lesson is envy of co-wives or pride of Chitraketu and the chief of Vidyadharas. Both have proved bad. Co-wives were put to shame, and Chitraketu got the body of a demon in his next life. So, envy and jealous, we should forego, we should give it up. 3, we should always look for opportunities of taking association of devotees, more so in the pure devotees. Those great sages who have completely taken shelter of the lotus feet of the Lord can at once sanctify those who come in touch with them. So this is one lesson we must always remember. The fourth lesson is we should not lament for loss of material possessions. We should not be over-endeavoring to get material possessions, just as we do not pray for the miseries, we don't have to pray for material possessions. Whatever is in our destiny, whatever is our past karma, as a result of our past karma, miseries or happiness will come on its own. So these are the 4 lessons that I could think of. If there are any questions or suggestions.
Thank you. Wonderful, Prabhu. You narrated the entire pastimes of Chitraketu Maharaj. Very till up to his this one. He became a demon. Next life, next class, we have to continue that pastime also, no?
No, Vratasura we already discussed 2 months ago.
Okay.
How he became Vratasura, I'm narrating now.
Okay.
Yeah. So next time something else.
Yeah.
Thank you for.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you.
And thank you for all the attentive hearing. I'm sure you all must have felt that I'm writing down something and reading it here. Yes, it is so. It is so, because I cannot speak for a long time. My age, my memory is short, so I cannot do that. So I am preparing a lecture myself and then almost reading everything. So please excuse me for this. And if you have, it is not my capacity that is important. It is the story or the message in the story that is important. So I consider that to be important. That's why I'm taking this seva. Thank you so much, Hare Krishna. Anybody else has any questions?